Let's bring in Behnam Taleblu, who's Senior Fellow at the Foundation for the Defence of Democracies. He's been on a tour of Australia and New Zealand, thanks to the Australia, Israel and Jewish Affairs Council. He joins me now live from Wellington. Thanks for joining us, Behnam. Just how concerned should we be about a broader escalation of battle into southern Lebanon between Israel and Hezbollah?
Greetings, Chris. It's a pleasure to be back with you. Listen, certainly if you're looking at the commentary from the Secretary General of the Iran-backed group Lebanese Hezbollah, they've made it clear that they have finished their round vis-a-vis Israel, at least their first round vis-a-vis Israel. But make no mistake, the regional war, the multi-front war, the 4, 5, 6, and even 7-front war that we've seen the Islamic Republic of Iran ignite against Israel less than a day after Israel was still counting bodies after the October 7 terrorist attack, that stuff is still set to continue. And most unfortunately, Tehran is betting on threatening a wider regional war from any one of these different fronts to be able to bank on American restraint so that that restraint can handcuff Israel rather than this Iran-backed axis.
Well, this is the critical point, isn't it? The role of Iran in all of this. Now, Hezbollah have long been controlled, funded, organised by Iran, but even the Sunni Hamas are funded and controlled by Iran now. And we've had the Houthi send a missile strike into Tel Aviv, again backed by Iran. So when we see people talking about ceasefires and Israel getting involved in ceasefires, there's no chance of a lasting peace, is there, while Hezbollah, the Houthis and Hamas are still armed and vowing to eradicate Israel?
Certainly not, and especially when you consider that a ceasefire would only be between the weakest of these groups, which is Hamas in Gaza, and a ceasefire would essentially allow the Islamic Republic to achieve its major regional war aims, which is to prevent the Israelis from being able to use military force to wipe this entity off the chessboard. And more importantly, in the medium to long term, those who think a ceasefire would bring lasting peace would forget that this entire constellation of terror in the Middle East would be more willing to dangle the threat of force to be able to erode Israel's policy options and the West's policy options in this troubled part of the world over time.
Now, I was interested to read a column in The Australian today by our former Foreign Minister, Alexander Downer, a man I used to work for and who we interview each week on this program. But he talks about reports that suggest that only 20% or so of the Iranian population actually support their regime, and that a full-scale war in the Middle East would not be supported by the people of Iran, and therefore the regime is very careful about that. It could be the undoing of them. What's your insight into the relationship between the Islamic regime in Iran and the people?
You know, I'm so glad he mentioned that, because there couldn't be a bigger chasm in this region between the state in Iran and the street or the society in Iran. If you're looking at who is behind this multiple boom and bust cycle of violence that we're seeing throughout the Middle East today, that is certainly the government of the Islamic Republic. But if you look at the people, since 2009, they have been chanting, not Gaza, not Lebanon, my life only for Iran. You have fundamentally a nationalist population that is ruled over and controlled over by an authoritarian and Islamist regime. And these two things don't mix. And that's why we've seen boom and bust cycles of protests at home. And believe it or not, despite the regime's conventional military deficiencies, what it's most afraid of is not a war with America, not a war with Israel, but getting toppled from within. That's why most Western governments, including the Australian government, including all Five Eyes governments, should be able to converge together on a policy that merges their statecraft and their soulcraft. And that is maximum pressure against this regime in Tehran and maximum support for the people, especially that entire breadth and depth that the former foreign minister mentioned, which is probably upwards of 80% opposing this regime.
Yeah, honestly, all the pressure is on Israel when there should be support for Israel and pressure on Tehran. Really good to talk to you again, Behnam. I appreciate it. Behnam Taleblu there. Pleasure. From the Foundation for the Defence of Democracies.